Hi, it's Lorna, and today we're going to be learning how to make 3 basic shapes with needle felting. We're going to be making a cube, a sphere, and a cone. So the materials you're going to need are needle tools. I'm using a variety of needle tools. I have small, medium, and large. And I have some wool and a felting mat. This is just a piece of black high-density foam. Highly recommend it. It's the best needle felting mat I have ever used, and I've used quite a few different types of materials. So I have pink, orange, and purple. And so I'm just going to show you what this is. So this is batting, and batting just means that they're crisscrossed. So the fibers are interweaved. They're not going in one direction. Now, I do have roving. Let me grab a piece of that. Roving means that the fibers are all going in the same direction. You can use this, but when I'm making just basic shapes, I like to turn my roving into batting anyways. So I'm going to save some time and start off with batting. You can use whatever you have available. You can also turn batting to an extent into roving by carding it. It's a process where you pull it apart using little spiky comb kind of thing, and it pulls all the fibers into the same direction. This batting has really short fibers, so it would take quite a while to do that if you wanted to get it to roving. Keeping it in a roving pattern is great for spinning yarn and projects like that, whereas I find that needle felting batting works the best. Because it's already pre-felted a little bit. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this into a bit of a ball. I don't want a whole lot of crevices or cracks, so I'm going to mix my wool up a little bit just to make sure that I have a nice tight ball. And when you rub it together and squeeze it, it's going to hold its shape a little bit better, but once you start poking, it'll really start to come together. So just watch those little crevices, and if you need to, after you're done felting, if you have any little holes where there wasn't as much wool, or if you have any canyons or crevices forming, you can take a little bit of the same color and just fill those in. So it's good to reserve some of the color so that you have some left over for touch-ups. So now I'm going to go over some of the tools that I'm using. I just have some needle tools here. I have red for small, and then my medium is yellow, and my large is blue. If you're going to get any needle tools and you're not sure what to buy, go with the small ones because you can do a lot with them. The large needles are great for bringing your wool together to start, and then so you can switch to a medium and then to a small. As the fibers get closer together and tighter, it's really difficult to get in there with a larger needle. So if you can kind of see here, there's teeth on the end of this needle, and it's kind of a triangle shape. They also have needles that are star shape, round, and ones that are twisted, and those do different things. They pull the fibers in different ways. Some are great for little fine details or even punch work of putting one hair in at a time. So I highly recommend getting a set that has a variety of different sizes of needles, but if you can't, that's okay. They do have gauges, so the higher in the number of the gauge, so if you have a 40 gauge needle, that's going to be really small. If you have a 26 gauge needle, that's going to be really large. So think about the circumference and opposite. So you want it to be a larger size for a smaller needle and a smaller number for a larger needle. And if you need to look it up, you can, and just look up needle gauge, and there's a lot of guides on how to tell that. So a lot of times it'll have it on there. It'll also have the size, so medium, and then it'll have the gauge. I like to buy based on gauge because medium is relative term to what you're comparing it to. And so a medium could be a large in one set and a small in another, just because of the different size needles that you're having next to it. So you can get them on Amazon like this. but you can also get them in a variety of different craft stores. Needle felting here in Sacramento is not that popular in craft stores, but even though it is becoming more popular, a lot of times it's difficult to order these specialty items. So you can go to online stores and maybe order them from a different state. I know that like Hobby Lobby and Walmart and Michael's online stores tend to carry a lot more of the fiber arts than the actual physical locations do. Okay, so I've just put a piece of blue felt down below so that you can see the contrast between the purple and the black. It's just a piece of craft felt. I'm not going to be felting into my mat, so it's not going to be wasted. It's just for some color contrast. So I'm kind of mixing up my batting just a little bit. A key tip to pulling is to make sure that you have a loose grip, because as you can see, if I was pulling really tight, it's not going to go anywhere. You want to move your hands further apart and loosen your grip, and the fibers will slide apart. If you hold really tight, it's not going to go anywhere. And that's because you're just pinching the fibers, which are making them lock into place. You really want to just give very gentle pressure. It's kind of counterintuitive to what you might think. So if you're having a hard time pulling the wool apart, do not cut the wool. Just loosen your grip. Pull lightly and it should come apart. If you cut the wool, a lot of times the edges are going to be blunt. So imagine if you give yourself a haircut and you cut it straight across, it's just going to give you a very straight edge, and it's not going to really blend. So if you try to curl your hair or something, it's not going to look very natural. So if you do a point cut, if you do have to cut your wool, cut it at a point cut, just like your barber would cut your hair, so that the edge is not as blunt. So when you're blending it together with other wool, it doesn't stick out as something that is unnatural. So I am just rolling this into a ball, and this is going to be my cone, my purple cone. I'm not using finger protectors, but they do sell them. You're welcome to use them. And I'm just going to felt this using my medium needle. So that's what my yellow one is. My yellow is my medium needle, and bring it together. And you just want to make sure that you're rotating, not in quarter turns. You want to make sure that you're rotating in all the way around so that it rounds out. You can do little like 20-degree turns, and then just look at it and see if you have any lines forming, like sides forming. You want to just keep rotating that, because if you poke in one area for too long, you're going to flatten your piece. And because we're trying to get something that is mostly round, you want to make sure that you're poking in that shape, right? So you'll see I poke 4 or 5 times, rotate, 4 or 5 times, rotate. And I'm moving my needle and poking in a lot of these loose little sides, but you'll see later on that I am rotating it quite a bit more often. So you just want to think about your shape ahead of time and poke in the direction of your shape. So if you wanted something egg-shaped, you don't want to immediately flatten it down to a sphere, because then you won't be able to bring that point back out. So I know that this is going to be cone shaped, so I'm rounding out the bottom, but I'm keeping the top almost like a teardrop shape to start. So another thing that I need to talk about is tension and pressure. So when you're felting, if you have this little marshmallow that I have here that's really light and fluffy, there's a lot of air, you want to really compact it and make it more dense. Now this can make it more difficult to see where you're poking. So if you do this, you need to press down poke, and then occasionally lift up your hands and look at what you're doing. Because it's really easy just to put pressure on, poke down. You could flatten this into a pancake in no time. So I'm just squeezing with gentle pressure in between my hands. A lot of beginners find that this is a little bit uncomfortable because you have to poke a lot closer to your fingers. Again, you can use finger protectors. They have ones that are leather, they have ones that are cut proof, they have ones that are silicone. So go ahead and experiment with that if you want. But over time, you will get used to where your needle is going, how deep it's going in, and you shouldn't poke yourself. So go ahead and add your pressure, and you can go a lot slower than I'm going as well. Slow down and take your time with this. Needle felting is a time-intensive project, so keep that in mind when you start it, and just put in the effort because it really pays off in the end. So as you can see, I've been poking for a while, and I have a rounded base and a pointier top, and that's just because I have spent more time poking the top, getting it nice and pointy. And you can go in and finesse this stuff later. I'm just trying to show you how to get the shape. So now to get the bottom flat, I'm just going to poke downwards. And you really want to make sure you're watching where your other fingers are. So you want to make sure that you're poking shallow, but not too shallow, because you want to be able to actually felt the fibers together. But you want to watch your fingers. You can put you put finger protectors on all of your fingers if you want. You could wear a glove, or you can just be mindful of where you're putting those fingers. If you're not comfortable holding this, you could probably set it into your mat and poke at a different angle. Instead of downwards, you could poke to the side to get this as well. But it's most effective if you're just poking downwards, because you can get a nice level, even base. So the goal of this is to flatten out the base. So I'm going to continue poking, and I will also show you a little trick that I like to do. Is I like to rub this on the table to kind of push and flatten the bottom using a little bit of friction. My table is really smooth, but my tables at work are a little bit rougher, and they work great for that. So that's just a little something that might be helpful, is you just rub it, and it really just kind of shows you how level it is, because you're pushing downwards on a surface that is flat. It will flatten out the bottom. So go ahead and go around and really flatten that out, and you'll have a cone. So our next color, I'm going to be doing a cube. So I want 6 flat sides in order to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to after I've started to pull it together into the same shape that we started the purple one with, the cone. We started it with a sphere or a rounded blob. So we're going to be doing that with this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump forward until I have it to that point, just to save a little bit of time. Okay, so as you can see, I have really rounded out this wool. That big fluffy blob turned into this more rounded shape. So what I want to do is with gentle pressure with my fingers is I'm giving it a quarter turn. So where with the cone, I rotated it quite frequently and really wanted to make sure that I didn't have any straight lines. But with this cube, I want those straight lines. So I'm going to do quarter turns. I'm going to be poking downwards. And I'm poking about halfway through. You don't want to poke all the way through your cube until you hit the mat, because what will happen is the fibers will start poking out the other side. So you really want to just do, I don't know, about 20 pokes on each side and then flip it. You want to give it a full turn. So you'll see here that I'm still kind of getting in some of those lumpy, bumpy bits here. So it looks very round, but I assure you, if you continue and follow along the ridges that you're carving out, you're going to get a nice cube. You could do this and make a rectangle for another project as well by just elongating it and not making all sides equal. So what makes it a cube is that all of my squares that make my cube are all going to be the same size. They're all going to be about an inch by the time that I am done. So clearly here you can see that I have a nice corner forming, and I just want to make sure that my corners on the other side are also forming. So I'm going to work to poke down this hump that you see here on the left hand side. There's a bit poking up. So I'm just going to flatten that out and reinforce all these edges. Now with this square, the cube, I'm just going to get to a basic cube shape. But if I spent a few more hours, not minutes, hours, felting this down, I can get really crisp lines. And so I'm going to add a time-lapse video of that at the end. If I showed you that in real time, again, this would be a very long video, which is why I'm cutting some things out. But just continue in this way over and over, and it will get tighter and tighter and tighter, and you can really get those lines nice and crisp. And after it's felted down to where you like it, you can actually trim the corners even more with a little pair of shears or scissors, like really sharp scissors. You can even get rid of just some of those little fuzzies and make a perfect cube. So you can see now I have all 6 sides about the same. It could definitely use some work to fix these corners, but I think you get the general idea of how to make the cube, and that's the point of this video. I'm not making any finished, refined pieces, but I will show you a time lapse of me fixing some of these parts if you're interested at the end. So I'm going to move on to my hot pink fuchsia color here. This is one of my favorite colors of wool. It's entirely synthetic and just dyed with so many dyes, but it is so pigmented and so pretty. So I'm just going to start it off like I did for my cube and my cone, and I'm going to start with a sphere, but I'm really going to show you how to make the sphere really refined. So to start, I'm doing gentle pressure and bringing it together. I'm poking a few times and rolling. My hand is in the way so that you cannot see the full shape. And that's important to note, is you're not going to be able to see your entire project because you should be holding it down. I find that when I'm teaching this, a lot of people will just leave their wool on the mat. They're not going to hold it with their other hand, and they just poke, and you could eventually get to the shape that you want, but without pressure and you holding those fibers together, it just takes so much longer. So if you're afraid of being poked, just build that confidence by going slowly, using the finger protectors, and taking your time. It's going to be a lot more effective than just poking it loosely. So get comfortable poking near your fingers. Okay, so I'm trying to get rid of any imperfections like crevices and things like that. So just be mindful of the little folds. And again, if you have reserved wool, you can fill those in at the end. Spheres are also one of my favorite things to wet felt. We do have a wet felting video on this channel. It's a wet felted Easter egg. So if you're interested in trying some wet felting, spheres are a great thing for that. And you could use a form in the inside, a little styrofoam ball, or you could just use more wool. And you can make little beads for a bracelet and just poke a hole through there, and that's really awesome. And it's just really, really cool to do with wet felting. So you can get it done a lot quicker and a lot tighter with wet felting as well. But if you want to do your whole project in dry felting, or you don't want to wait a whole day or a week for your wet felting to dry, then doing it this way is fantastic. And you can use any of these shapes to build other projects. So in a few of my other needle felting projects, it shows how to join felted pieces together by using other bits of wool. And you can put them together and make a little person, whatever you want. So I just have a loosely felted sphere here, and I am going to tighten that up a bit at the end. So feel free to stay and watch those time-lapse videos. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to see more of our videos, please hit the notification bell. Have a wonderful time.